This is a test for the council work session and council meeting on May 18th. I'll go check in there.
You ready?
I'm not sure yet. Let's see what we got.
We have corn.
We have a quorum, we just don't have Bill and Dan.
Should we,
You
can
can
you hear us?
Yep.
No echo this time.
Oh, darn.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna start texting them, we're gonna start the meeting, but I'll start texting to see where they're at and what's going on.
Okay, very good.
Okay.
Good evening, citizens and staff. I'm Mayor Carol Westfall, hereby call to order this meeting, the City Council's meeting work session in the City of Klamath Falls on Monday, May 18th, 2020. We will be discussing CISBO, or bio discussion, and then the Steam Sports Park. So we will start with City Manager Nathan Trubisky.
Mayor, members of council, really the purpose of this first discussion is just to bring up to speed and get a feel for your interest in participating. So CISBio is an Australian-American conglomerate, not a big company, but a company that specializes in restoring impaired bodies of water. So reservoirs mostly is where they spend a lot of their time. In Australia, small lakes, Australia, South Africa, Texas, other spots within the United States they've worked on. What they have, what's proposed is for them to do a feasibility study on Lake Ewanna to see if there's a way to utilize their technology to improve that body of water. I think eventually, if they could prove it that it works there, then we could look to do it in certain areas of the upper Klamath Lake. But they have proposed coming here and doing a feasibility study. I'll say that the timeline of that is a little bit up in the air simply because of the travel and some of their experts will be coming out of Australia to look at it. So I forwarded you a bunch of information they sent us, and there were some links on the website that I don't know if you all had a chance to look at those. Randy Cox from KCEDA is the one. It was actually through a resident, a semi-retired contractor in Running Y who brought this group to our attention, and he's been having conversations with them. And so really we're just looking for what council's thoughts are on participating in something like this. So open it up to questions from council.
This is Todd. So is the ask just use of city land? Is that basically what the ask is going to be from us?
So there's two parts to it, right? The city land would be if we were to move forward with something. It looked at certain parts in the park where it might make sense to base some of the equipment. Right now, it's the feasibility. I think it's about $38,000, roughly, let's call it $40,000. Do we want to participate in that? So some of it would be financial up front. Do we want to help pay for the feasibility? And then if we did that and it looks like this would be something positive and we move forward, there would be some of the lands that we own would be part of that. And there are some others, if you look at it, that are privately held or held by other organizations. And so I think we would have to go out and try and bring some of those groups in to run a pilot test once we get to that stage, see if it makes a difference.
Does this group need to get ultimately permission from the Oregon Water Resource or Waters Division? I mean, who is governing them when they get started, if they get started?
So I think that's part of the feasibility is to see where the licensing is. I think everybody recognizes that, there's not a water issue, so they're not taking water out. So certainly, they're not probably with Oregon, Resource, but maybe, Division of State Lands, who tends to run that. Army Corps, potentially, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, there are some others. Some of those have already been reached out to just to see what their thoughts are. And I think they're all curious if this will work. I think the biggest lake they've done so far is 900 acres. The Lake Ewanna is, about 450, I think, what they're looking at, but it's also part of a flow-through system, and I don't know that they've done those, so that's part of what the feasibility is looking at, is can they make a difference in a lake like this?
So I think they most likely would probably have to get a 401 permit I mean, that's what Pacific Power does. They don't take water, but the water runs through their dams. And they have to, so they get a 401 from the state of Oregon and a 401 from the state of California. And that is not an easy process. And my concern of us investing $40,000 or being a part of that without fully understanding what they would have to be required to do. And I understand you're saying the 40,000 tells us what they need to do. I think we have some expertise in the area that could tell us what they need to do, and then if they're going to get permission to do it or not. I think it's a great concept. Don't misinterpret me, but I think there's a lot more hurdles. It's not just, hey, we'd love to have you here, and then they throw it into the lake.
Is the Cullen person wanting to speak?
That's us.
Oh, that's us. So Randy, do you have anything else to say on that, a response?
If I can unmute myself, I might be able to be okay. But no, we would go through the process. This is really understanding if they could handle Lake Ewanna, if that's even the right location for them to look at this process. It would be an initial feasibility study. We have talked to several agencies, as Nathan said, that are interested in this possibility, and we'd continue to work with those agencies before we pulled the trigger to move forward. But the first treatment center is at the sort of the mouth of Link River, and then all the way down through Agency Lake. There is some question if that's the right location to treat because of all the algae material that's flowing down from the Upper Klamath. They are not interested today with the Upper Klamath. They're working on the Upper Klamath. They'd like to have a more controlled area, and that's why we chose Lake Ewanna to look at a controlled area to prove the proof of concept, basically.
And nobody's harvesting any algae in Lake Ewanna.
Correct.
Nobody's harvesting anything that this would be affected. Are there any tailings? Do they screen off the algae, or how are they going to be treating?
It's basically they change the serrations of the water, the different layers in the water, and they disturb that or disrupt those different layers, which actually will deepen the lake at the same time as they're cleaning the lake of the algae growth.
Councilman Andrews?
Do these have fish screens?
So the technology, at least of what they've shown us, it's a laminar flow, so there are no moving parts in the water. And so it's the aeration that's coming up there's not a pump actually in the water. The pump is located, those are what would be located on the city property. They're smaller pumps if you're using their technology. So if you've gone to their website, you'll see they show their little cartoon drawing about the laminar flow, and I know I'm not an expert on it. I've looked at it a couple times, but as far as I can see, there are no moving parts within the water, so you're not looking at having incidental take with with endangered species like you do when you have the big, impellers inside the water.
I think their most interesting case study is the Puerto Rico case study where they've increased DO or dissolved oxygen. They reduce substantially both phosphorus and nitrogen. Those are two things that we fight on bringing industries to Klamath. Those TMDLs are very prohibited from extending or encouraging businesses to utilize the lake. It would give the city an opportunity, or whoever is involved, an opportunity to create a nutrient bank so that they could store up nutrients that they're removing from the lake, both in phosphorus and nitrogen, to release those to other people that might be looking at moving to Klamath that would produce phosphorus or nitrogen that would go into the lake.
But to clarify, the $40,000 is just for them to study to see if their program works, not, it doesn't get into if they're allowed to. That money won't be used to see if there's licenses they need to obtain or anything like that. Is that correct?
Correct. It's a design analysis. The engineer is looking at 3 different areas. They're looking at the resources that would be needed, the data processing, and then also the design or solution, bulk water solution design.
Yeah. So my only caution is that I would love to find out from the authorities that will grant us the permission to be in the lake or not, to get a hint from them first before we spend any money of, yeah, this is something we should probably do. And I would love that in writing. I mean, I think this is a great concept, and if it works, geez, we just solved a huge issue in this entire basin. And so, in fact, I pray that it works, and I pray that we can get this thing going. It's just unfortunately, there's a lot of different bodies moving on right now who have different opinions of what works and what doesn't work, and no one wants to screw around with the health of a fish. Unfortunately, I mean, maybe not unfortunately, but
Councilwoman Bell?
Only if it improves the health of the fish. So they like that.
yeah.
I'm fascinated by the idea of this. It's an enormous problem that kind of comes up in a lot of different kind of conversations. So I also would love for it to happen and to be helpful. I would like to learn more, as Councilor Andrus talks about. I'm curious, are there other funders in this particular stage, or is it being asked of the city only?
Kendall, we believe there'll be other funders for this initial look. We will spread our web out and look to raise funding from several different organizations. But we wanted to bring it to the city council first and see what your feeling was on this particular project.
Very good. Councilman Dodson, any thoughts on this?
I think we have to try something. I'm pretty sure status quo is not going to survive.
Okay.
And we got to start with somebody's idea. So who's the one we've got for now? I'm fine with it.
Excellent.
So Bill and Dan should both be on the line.
Yes. Councilman Studenberg, any thoughts on this?
You don't? What about?
How about Councilman Toffel? Can you hear me?
He's muted. Person, this project. There you go.
Sorry, you were muted. Could you repeat that, please?
I'm very intrigued by the idea, but I don't want the city to be the only funding source for this project.
Okay, very good. How about Phil?
Okay.
Councilman Studenberg, any thoughts on this?
Oh.
seeing if he has logged in yet.
He says he's listening, but there'll be no video of him.
Does he have anything to say on it?
Is he watching or is he?
I'm gonna ask him. So, I wonder if he's watching the YouTube stream.
Okay.
Well, good thought. I would really like to see that lake cleaned up as well, and hopefully it'll help us with our, TML.
You know, specifically would help us out, but, I think as Randy pointed out, it would give us an opportunity if somebody did cut a bank. So if you're kicking pollutants out, it would allow somebody else to put some stuff in, whether it be us or industry or something else. too.
That's great. And Councilman Tofel says Studenberg says he supports it. So, excellent. Well, thank you so much. Any more questions or any more discussion on this? Anybody?
If I might, what I'm
Go ahead.
taking from this is I'll work with Randy, he'll look for some other funders. We'll try to identify exactly what regulatory authorities would need to be involved. I've had conversations with several, including the tribe, about this, and I think there's a lot of people who are, intrigued by the idea, and much like Council Andrews would really love to see it work.
Mm-hmm.
So those will be our marching orders. We'll go from that. As I said, right now with the current status of international flying and things, they weren't really looking to come up here right away anyways. So that gives us a little bit of time, and then we'll be able to report back to council.
Excellent. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we're on to,
Thank you.
on to Steen Sports Park discussion.
Okay.
Mhm.
Still in the Councilor Studenberg on the phone.
Sorry.
He says he's watching.
Okay. The issue really, as council recalls, I think it was back in January, Commissioner Morris came along with Mike Reeder from the Steen Sports Park Board and indicated the county was going to support them and help them as Dave Steen was retiring, essentially for free, and so they needed some help to come up with a plan on how to move forward. So we requested financial information, a plan, what were they planning to do. So they submitted that. I've provided council a memo. I think there are a couple things that we want to understand. Specifically, are there others who, what additional information does council need going forward? Are there others who should be involved in this discussion? As I pointed out, mostly this is focused on the baseball side of the park. There's a lot of soccer, there's pickleball, there's a bunch of other activities that are happening out there. It's not clear who represents them or how that works. And are there others that, other groups you'd like to hear from as we move this forward? So in this community, we have a lot of people who do a lot of the same things. So we have Little League, KYBS both operate baseball. Basin United is already tied with the park, they operate the soccer. So those are the questions the staff had before we could, felt comfortable trying to bring something to council. And on the phone, or on the meeting, I know Scott White is a consultant helping, the sports park. And I'm not sure who else is on the call from the sports park.
Yeah, I think Mike Reeder's supposed to be on here, but I'm not sure if he is yet.
I'm here. I'm muted.
Okay.
Oh, so I unmuted you. I thought,
There he is.
I guess that was you, so.
It might have been a good choice, but. But I'm here. Kelly's not. We just said we can do this. So she's at home having dinner, I presume.
Very good.
So really, The question is to council, how do they want us to proceed? Is there additional information they need, in order to consider this? I'll say from staff's perspective, it's a great amenity. It's a facility we need to, think long and hard, how does it continue to function? And so, but we also don't want to throw money at it without a sound plan moving forward, because I think it'll be back in front of you regularly otherwise. Which, from a public policy standpoint, that could be fine if the city wants to support that. We just need to go into it with our eyes wide open about what that really means. So I will now, we have people who might be able to answer the question, just to encourage, turn it over to council and let them ask.
Well, can I just begin by making a simple statement to all of you?
Go ahead.
Okay, so, I have Scott White. He's our director, our new director. Dave Steen has resigned, but he's not really leaving. He's just doing the maintenance. He may never leave. That's the reality we have. And Scott's going to be the director for the time being. And of course, we're looking at programs and trying to figure out how to survive without with the salary that we didn't have to pay Dave. But also a lot's happened since the last time we met, obviously, the COVID-19 thing. And we understand the situation that you guys are facing, and how difficult it is now to give money to a park. And I'm kind of here to make a counter proposal. The county's offer was 2 years, not any longer. And I know you've mentioned that it may be more permanent, but we don't see it that way. And their offer of giving us $50,000 for 2 years, or up to $50,000, was met by a challenge to you. But what about this? We do need to work together. We do need your support. And you're right about the fact that baseball has different levels and different people doing it. But what we really do need is your support down the future. And an example would be, if you said that you were verbally going to give us some cash for let's say a capital expense or an item that I write a grant for, that would be a real help for us, a real help to go back to the county and say that you guys do support us. And it would be an example, like, for example, last year when we were writing grants for the pool, you put in $15,000 and said, this is what we're going to do for the pool from the park fund. And we were able to use that $15,000 as community support in our grant, which is a big thing. If a community is behind something, other people in a foundation somewhere else are more likely to support you. And that's what honestly, that's what we really need for the park. We have lots of problems, obviously, and our job is to solve them. But grant writing is going to be a big part of that. So really, if you asked us, you may choose to give us money, and don't let me talk you out of that. But another option is to give us verbally a commitment that says you're going to support us as we go forward in some of these projects that I mentioned in our plan. So anyway, that's option B for you, and I'll just throw that out as something that you might consider. And it wouldn't be every year. It wouldn't be now. Obviously, now I think is a real silly time to ask for money, personally. But we do need your support. We want to work with you guys in the future. Anyway, I'm throwing that out as an option. And now I'd like to introduce Scott White. He's our director. And if you have something to say, Scott, or should we just get into answering questions?
Well, I'll start with the questions that Nathan brought up there that I think that he was asking. And to echo what you said, Mike, yeah, there's lots of different baseball factions. I certainly appreciate that you guys are invested in some of that relative to Kiger and some of the organizations in town as well. The way I look at it, though, is we've got this gorgeous facility up here that largely sits vacant on weekends and periodically throughout the year. Our main goal is to try and fill that up, nonstop. I mean, I see tremendous opportunity out here relative to tournaments. You look at the Medford model or the U.S. Cellular model and the amount of money that they bring into their community. We could at least be getting a piece of that in some regard. Obviously, we would have to coordinate with their schedule and possibly some schedules in Bend, maybe even Reading, things like that. But point being is we need to start looking at those opportunities and bringing people here that are actually going to pay money to come use these facilities rather than just the periodic local type stuff that we've got going on right now. So relative to our planning, it's all just that. We've got a committee together to kind of start looking at some of these programs that we've talked about conceptually, to start vetting those. We met with Basin United just last week. In fact, I'm going to meet with them again here, Mike and I, right after we get off of this. So we're looking for additional opportunities to partner with the folks that are already utilizing the park to see how we can better utilize it even further, if that makes any sense to y'all. So, so point being is we are actively looking for opportunities to generate more revenue coming into not just the park, but also the community as a whole. At least from my perspective, and I think it's fair in speaking for the board here, we view this as a community park, and it is for the community and our entire community. And if we can bring outside dollars in to help fund this thing, that's a win-win for everybody who calls this place home. So I'll pause there and see if I may have answered some questions. If you got any more, feel free to ask.
I just will add one more thing that, in the upcoming weeks, we're going to be hiring a new person, a person much like Kelly Ruiz at Basin United, who's going to be an operations manager or a programs coordinator. I don't know what the name is exactly, but this is something that we have never done before. And, you mentioned that, the park is kind of unique, being, the fact that Mike's Fieldhouse was built by the Wendt family and for soccer and all of that. But we are working on our relations to work together and coordinate everything. And this is a new beginning. I mean, Dave never did that. And we're pushing forward and taking some risks and actually moving forward now with this person and implementing these programs. And, it's a question mark. I mean, obviously we're going to need support from the county right away. And we'd love to have support and coordination with you as well. But, we have problems, but, the real question, and I wrote to you, Nathan, when I responded to you, I came on in about January, and then all of a sudden, all shit hit the fan. And now, we're kind of stuck, but I have every intention of moving forward. But the question that I asked, and my wife asked repeatedly, is, why are you doing this? And it's because it's worth it. And we honestly believe that. The board's working hard. We have made arrangements with the whole pickleball group. Their board is on our board now. We're coordinating with them. And that's a big thing. And that's how I plan to run the park. And that's how Scott plans to run the park, working with people, coordinating with them, and, working out problems. So I have a lot of optimism moving forward. And like I said, I understand the risk. I understand the situation, but, is it worth it? And if you guys think it is, then we'd love to have you support us in one way or another. Anyway, go ahead with any other questions.
All right. Well, I just want to start by saying thank you very much. I've been to Medford and I saw the tournaments at US Cellular, and they do bring in quite a few people, and we are building hotels here, and I would love to see them full. And so I appreciate your energy and your thoughts. So open it up. Any questions from council, please? Councilwoman Bell?
Sure. One thing I'm wondering about, has there been an effort to find a corporate sponsor for the park to date? And what was the result of that? And then I have a follow-up comment after that.
Well, the simple, correct answer is no, we haven't really worked on that. Nathan and I have talked about that. Polly Stork and I are working on a project that is similar, not quite as detailed as what you just asked, but she wants to get a place where her husband works to support making that obstacle course. And she thinks that's something that we haven't done. And in my conversations with her, honestly, before that, I never even thought of corporate sponsorship, but that might be the beginning of what we're doing. But no, not officially, but somewhat, if that's the answer. But that's, Scott, that's what he thinks as well. He thinks that, my writing grants is just, small potatoes. It's really corporate sponsorship that eventually will get us to the next level. So it's something we're going to pursue, but as of right now, like I said, I just started in January. We're dealing with all of this. That's in the cards for the future, but you know, we'll be working on it.
One of the things I had just started looking into prior to COVID was renewing the Parks and Recreation District discussion. That would be a dream of mine, to have a urban growth boundary Parks and Rec district that would cover Kiger and Ella Redkey and Steens. But when COVID hit, it kind of, again, that's going to push that out at least a year. No one's in the mood for going for a bond at this point. But ultimately, that's where I would love to see our money go to, is maybe sponsoring the feasibility study that would go along with that. I know they're quite expensive, but to me, it seems like a long-term sustainable solution that the whole community could get around. I don't know if there's some capacity to work into that during this time, but boy, I think that would be just an amazing way to go.
I was on the last two committees to get a recreation district, and they didn't end well, but I'm all aboard with that. And the last time we did it with Jennifer Little, Catherine and Steph had a person that they hired through the wellness, Healthy Klamath, I should say. And she did do a report on a feasibility study, and it's still there. I'm not sure where, but I'm totally in agreement with you, Kendall. I think that, I'm all about health and wellness, and a recreation district makes so much sense. It's always complicated. It's not as easy as it sounds, and it requires a lot of cooperation, but I really see our park as a real big component of that. And how do you do it? I don't know, but yes, I agree with you. And I would be 100% behind that.
If you could,
Andrews? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I would love to see the study. If you know where it might be, I could kind of help track that down.
Well, it was Healthy Klamath through them, and it was Jennifer Little, who I'm sure you know now, and she had it, and we originated it from a small committee. I don't know where it is, but she'd be the one I talk to.
Councilwoman Bell, we'll be happy to track that down for you.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Councilman Topol.
Yeah, I really like the idea of the second recommendation, maybe seeing what we could do to help them with some grant applications. And if we had to, maybe come up with some match money for them. I think that's, in the short term, that's the way to go. But I also agree with Councilman Bell in the long term for the success of Kiger and Steen Sports Park, Wired Park, and everything else, and Ella Redkey. I think we really do need to take a hard look at a recreational district for the urban growth boundary.
Yeah, I agree. And I appreciate your comment about that offer being, if you think that's a good idea. It would be really beneficial for me to write grants, to have your support. It would be helpful for me to go back to the county and said, they are going to support us even in spite of all this. And, but, on your own terms, not theirs necessarily, but we'd appreciate it.
Councilman Andrews.
Yeah, thank you. I echo what Councilwoman Bell's. I think we need to create some type of taxing district to help a long-term funding solution for the area. And I like the idea that how do you include the Ella Redkey pool and Kiger Stadium, because then it really makes sense of why the city is really getting involved with this. And the only other thing I wanted to add is I think we got the right people up at Steen Sports Park working on this issue. I appreciate both the individuals coming in and talking to us. I really I listened. One thing you said, Mike, is you're open and willing to work with everyone, and I appreciate that because that's where we're going to get a solution for this.
Yeah, did I mention you in that? I'm not sure.
No, you didn't. But no, I appreciate that. But I would tend to think about the money going towards a marketing plan on how you get that district passed. That's what I would love to see the money go towards.
Well,
efforts to do that.
that's the recreation district has its problems in designing just how you're going to do it. And the first time with Jeff Ball, he had a plan where we pooled money and you just applied for grants, for mini grants. And I like that idea. We never really got that far the second time. And it makes it, for the example, with the Little League fields, they're trying to expand. They have these, fields that are kind of, I don't want to say dilapidated, but there I did. But they need to be repaired every year by the parents, and they come in. And they could write a grant, get enough money, to fix that, and then be kind of self-sustaining throughout the rest of the year for the rest of the couple of the years. And the hard part of the recreation district proposal has always been how to sell it to people in town who don't have kids here. And why would they pay for, my neighbor's kid? But they would pay for improvement, and they would buy. I think they would buy into the idea that we're not just pumping money into a sport and they're just asking for more and more every year. The sport would have facilities and then would have to be self-sustaining. It would still have to be, I don't necessarily agree with this, but I think it would have to be pay to play to convince people that they're going to support that. And so Jeff Ball's idea was pretty good. It was pretty good. I liked it. But, I'm more than happy to work on that. That's kind of my focus, health and wellness.
Mike, yeah. I think one of the things you did and it was a smart move by you guys, was you did put those pickleball courts in there. So now you've expanded why more people want to see Steen Sports Park succeed. I think this traveling baseball concept or hosting, I think that adding, you're expanding why more people will want to see this happen. I think if I owned a hotel, I would want you to succeed. So I think we're going to get there. It's just, I think it's maybe a coordinated marketing and education need that will have to go out to the community of why they need to support this.
Yeah, I'm not an expert in marketing by any means, but I'm willing, I took this on willing to make it work. And I appreciate your comment that, because we really did work well with the pickleball people. I helped them with grants and now they're on our board. We were just talking with them last week where they're still playing, by the way, even though we closed the courts. And they want to add 2 more courts, and they want to add a pavilion like we did at the pool. And so there's a lot of, working together with people has its benefits and its good side. So yeah, we want to continue that. But like I say, I haven't got a clue about marketing, but that's not going to be a problem.
Very good. Councilman Studenberg, any thoughts on this?
Thank you. I think I finally made the meeting. So, I shut it down and started over again, and it seemed to work the second time. But I support the district, and I also support working with Mike for grants and some expertise and that type of thing. Well, obviously, we're not in a position to be putting money into this now, but I think you can certainly support them in the short term in terms of trying to get grants, and in the long term, I am definitely on board with working to get a district of some sort.
Yeah. Thank you. We will too. That's a big thing. I'm all aboard with that.
Very good. And Councilman Dodson.
I got lots of thoughts, of course, on this one. Well, thanks, Mike and Scott, for joining us and talking a little bit. I think there's now that the sports park's been in existence for 15, 20 years.
20 years.
I think it's time to look at it and be like, this overarching thing is, I believe it is a great asset to the community and I want to see it succeed. I'm having a hard time understanding how one facility that everyone references under one name, being the sports park, has a board for soccer, a board for the sports park, which from the write-up looked like baseball, and then now a board for pickleball. Like it feels to me that.
Can I help clarify that for Matt?
Sure.
So, well, first of all, the pickleball board, they're separate. I don't know, the Klamath Basin Pickleball, but their board members, Christy, Red, Patty, Hopkins, they are now on our board. So, but there's no connection. They're just there because they want to help the park. And, you know, and the fact that we help them, they bought into the park, they want to be members. And so there's no real, you know, coordination issue or problem with that. They're not part of the park. Now, as far as the Basin United, okay, so we started with a lease from the county, 140 acres, and it's one thing, it's Steen Sports Park. Then the Went Family Foundation built Mike's Fieldhouse for soccer in memory of their son. And so they have a lease with us. Now, we're technically, well, we are half owners, they are half owners, and they manage it and run scheduling. And so it's a bit, you know, odd, but that's just the way it was dealt, you know, that's the hand I've got, so I have to deal with that. But does that help explain that? So what we're doing, where we're going right after this meeting is to talk with those people at Basin United and try to, you know, clear the air there and work out agreements so that this whole thing works. So first thing I'm going to try to do is to coordinate a walking program like I had in the report, and they're fine with that, or I think based on the last meeting, I think they are. And then from there, we want to work together to build the floor and have other activities. There's always going to be a conflict there because it was built by the Went Family Foundation and for Mike Went. And so, you know, how do you deal with that? So that's our issue. But it's something that can be resolved, and, you know, I think it will be. Does that help clear that up?
A little bit. And when you say it was built, is that the physical structure, or is that the structure plus all the soccer fields?
That I don't know. I think the baseball fields were built first, and then they built the soccer, Mike's Fieldhouse second, and then helped make the fields. But the fields are, everything is the parks. They own half the building as long as they're there. And we have a lease agreement for maintenance and watering of the fields. And, you know, so it's an awkward situation, but that's the way it is. And, you know, it's hard to explain other than that, but, you know.
Right, well, but I think that'll get to the heart of the issue, right? Like, that shouldn't be hard to explain. Like, in order for it to succeed, it should be simple to explain. It's going to take some people probably swallowing pride at some point.
Well,
but to have a realistic long-term future, it needs to be a clear pecking order of who's in charge of what.
Yes.
And where funding comes from. And a little bit of that'll stem from kind of what you say, you know, you're hiring someone to run project, or a rec coordinator almost, which is just doubling up services, because currently Basin United has someone that does that and all the infrastructure in place.
Well, I see what you're saying, but I don't necessarily agree that we're doubling up services. Kelly Ruiz is the coordinator for Mike's Fieldhouse, and her full-time job is dealing with soccer. And the person we're going to hire, that person's going to be dealing with, you know, other issues on baseball, pickleball, the walking program, everything else. So, and there's nothing that says they can't coordinate and work together. But you're right, there are issues, and maybe I didn't explain it as well as I could, but, you know, part of our job here is to work those things out. And, you know, that's my dilemma. That's what we have to do. But, and like I said, you know, you're dealt a hand and you play them. And, you know, you can't do much about it except try to resolve the issues. I don't know how to explain it better than that, but I'm pretty confident that whatever issues we have are going to be resolved, and we'll end up working together because each of us need each other. We need to be partners.
Right. Yeah, I think so too. So I guess, you know, kind of big picture as far as the city's role, I feel like the the users and operators of that park need to be coming as a unified group and saying, this is how this whole thing survives. Not this is how our half survives or our 25% survives.
Yeah, and you know what? Maybe that recreation district is the way to resolve that.
And I think that's a great option, but you know, I also think that baseball's been here for a long time, and you know, soccer's, I think, in the black operating. It just seems like everyone needs to talk together to say, how do we keep this nice facility here instead of each tacking down their own path?
That's, you know, like I said, we're about ready to go to another meeting, and that's
Yeah.
exactly.
And I get you're working on that, and that's just kind of, I guess, you gotta do everything when you can, right? But it feels like that should be coming for us to get on, for me to get on board. I feel like I need to know that everyone up there is on board.
Well, you know, Matt.
No worries.
Yeah, that's not happening right away. I mean, it's something that's going to take time. And, you know, one of the things I always try to do is I treat people honestly and fairly. And to be honest, it takes time to develop trust. And that's what you're talking about. And, you know, at some point, you just have to say, well, I think this guy's going to get it done. You have faith in us and our ability to get these things done, but there's no guarantees. But, you know, I don't disagree with anything you said.
Yeah, and just I mean, kind of the risk here, right, for us as an entity, and I appreciate you throwing out a plan B. I think that one is a lot easier to jump onto a certain grant or a couple of grants for specific things. But if we say yes to 50,000 for 2 years, how do we say no to Little League if they need money? How do we say no to the basketball people if they need it? Base United has a couple of down years. How do we say no to them? And all of a sudden, it's $250,000 every year going to these organizations instead of just 50,000 to one.
Yeah, I get
You know,
that.
what's the threshold of saying, well, we help them but not them? Because I think our citizens are going to use all of them or none of them. But how do we pick and choose a winner without knowing that you guys are all talking to each other?
Well, you know, I don't know. So I'm going to tell you this. I think I'm pretty confident that through the Pickleball League and Play and their membership and this new traveling baseball, we're going to be in the black. And, you know, that's just my gut feeling. And I think if everything works out, and why won't it? I mean, we're organized, we're going to be efficient. We're going to have, you know, if one thing I can do well, it's organize things. And, you know, that's half the battle. In terms of what baseball, Dave has never done this. He's leased the fields or rented the field game by game and stayed out of the whole thing, probably wisely. And we're kind of doing the same thing, but we're creating something new. It's not going to be any interfering with the baseball existing leagues. And we're creating something new with pickleball. And so those two things, I think, give us a head up, or at least a hand up, I should say. How do you know, the decision of how you spend your money, you know, I don't know. I can't answer that. But I'm telling you that I think it's worth it here. And that's why that offer I made, you know, just watch us. Watch and see what happens, and then decide down the road when you're ready, when it's convenient and you have the money. And this, who do you give it to issue isn't as prominent. Give us the money when we ask for it if you think we're doing okay. And that'll help me. It'll help, you know, get that grant. Community involvement is huge. And it'll help us with the county because they'll think that you're supporting us as well. And once the domino starts rolling in your direction, it's amazing what happens. So anyway, I don't know what to say.
Okay, any more comments or discussion on this? So are you looking for sort of a consensus?
I'm just looking, yeah, what is council sense of coming back? Do you want us to talk some more with Mr. Reeder or Mr. White and explore that option B that you put out there? You know, with the current state of the economy, nobody knows exactly how it's gonna come out, and I do think we need to be wise where we spend funds. And I do think other groups, if you fund here, you will get other groups asking you for money. They're already in the wings watching. We just received a study on Tiger Field. It's going to need some work, specifically in the grandstands. The 50,000 would cover the 2 bleacher issues. I don't know what would cover the grandstand issues. So there's a lot of questions out there. That council just needs to be aware of. So I'm just looking for some direction. What do you want me to spend my time or my staff's time doing?
And just to make it clear, what our plan B, our compromise offer was, is to, take a look, make a commitment, not necessarily now, and I'm not asking for a certain amount, but help us, just say that you're gonna help us with capital improvement items, in the future with grants, and leave it at that. And, it's a non-binding agreement. And just watch what we do. And when we have a project that looks like it's gonna benefit you, then it makes more sense to give us that money. And you decide, you do your own thing. Don't listen to the county, and it's the offer of, half of ours or whatever. You can, make your own decision. But I think that's a fair offer, and it puts me in a better position to write grants, because they just have more community support. We're more likely to get it, and that way you're helping the community that way. Anyway, I just wanted to clear that up.
Very good. Councilwoman Bell.
Yeah, I would support that path. I would also be curious about what a full-blown feasibility study would cost. I know we'll find the one that has been done recently, but I'm not sure it's as broad as I would be interested in seeing, and that's taking it to the next step and actually evaluating our community and determining what dollar amount they have a tolerance for and what a better success, what the target rate would be to increase the success of this. I see it going to each entity that we want to include, evaluating all the capital improvements and programming, aiming really high and with the wish list, and then matching it with our community ability to support, then taking that number to the community. And that probably would take about a year, and that may be a better environment at that point to look at that. I would still love to see the local one, but I feel like it would be nice to really know what the tolerance is of our community members. And in the meantime, if we want to help with the grant situation, I think that's great, whether it's matching funds or just general support. I think that's great if that is something that would be helpful at this point.
Well, one thing, when we worked with Jennifer and Catherine and Stephanie, we paid an intern. She came here for, I don't know how long, most of the year. I think we paid her $11,000. But there was other people on the committee who were looking at more like $25,000 to $30,000. And her research did include, it wasn't just local, it was, other places, other towns that were equivalent to us in Eastern Oregon, like Lapine was the place that she compared us with. It was our size, roughly the same isolation that we have from Medford. They were from Portland, and they didn't have a recreation district. They had a college. It was very much of equivalent. But I don't know how valuable that is now. But anyway, that's the information.
It would be interesting. I think I know who you're talking about. The rare student, Kim.
Yeah, Kim. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
You have a better memory than I do.
I'm on board with supporting, getting a letter if that's what Mike needs, saying that we'll support grant funding for capital projects.
So am I.
Councilman Stuenberg?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm on board too.
Excellent. And Councilman Toffel?
I'm on board with.
Okay. And Councilman Andrus? I need a verbal.
I I think we're getting.
Is it okay?
Yeah, I think that's good direction.
That space
Excellent.
bar is so far away.
All righty, well then.
I think
So,
we're good.
okay, we're good. We will, thank you so much for joining us.
And we thank you guys. We appreciate what you just did. It's gonna help us.
Thank
Very
you.
good.
Good luck.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
We're gonna
Thanks,
need,
Mike.
Bye.
yeah, I'm leaving the
Scott.
meeting. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay,
Bye.
so this concludes our, work session.
So we'll be back in just a second for the council, the others here. So I'm going to share this.
You definitely.
Good evening, citizens and staff. I'm Mayor Kara Westfall, hereby call to order this council meeting on Monday, May 18th, 2020 at 7 p.m. Roll call, please.
Counselor Toffel?
Here?
Counselor Dodson?
Here.
Counselor Stuenberg?
Here.
Counselor Bell?
Here.
And Counselor Andre.
Here.
Okay, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To
the
the
flag
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under
under God, indivisible,
with
with liberty and justice for all.
And we have a presentation for Karen Bird for 15 years of service with Public Works Development Services. And we will make sure that she gets that. So thank you so much. Public comment. I will open this up for public comment at this time. Anybody wishing to call in? Do we have somebody on the phone?
We'll have to wait and see if anyone raises their hand.
You can comment on anything that is not on the,
So you can use the sound if you want.
and you're live on public comment in the city of Klamath Falls.
Okay.
Would you like to say something? You are on city council public comment time.
It's Mrs. Wells,
Mrs. Wells?
I think. Is that who it is?
She's muted.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead. You're unmuted.
I just got on to listen to the Quiet Zone report, and then I thought maybe I'd have a question.
Can you please state your name for the record?
Sally Wells.
Thank you.
All righty. So we will be discussing that.
Thank you.
Maybe, okay. Anybody else for public comment wishing to speak at this time that is on anything that is not on the agenda? Anybody else? Okay, seeing and hearing nobody else, we'll close that out at this time.
Can you pause for 1 second?
Okay,
Can you pause the meeting just for 1
and we're going to pause for 1 second.
The screen is just spinning in there, so it's not. No, but if we're broadcasting over YouTube,
On video.
I'm concerned that there might be an issue with
Yes, on video.
There's a few things before.
Just a quick question. Can you all see the shared screen?
Yes, I can.
Yep.
okay.
Yeah, I can.
All right, we were having an issue in the other room. That's kind of our test, and I think it's an internal internet issue, so.
Okay, so we'll continue? Okay, on the number 5, consent agenda, the approval of the consent agenda, meeting agenda, and establishment of the quiet zone at Portland Street and Crater Lake Parkway status update. And I would like to ask council if they are okay with Public Works Director Mark Wilbrett clarifying a few revisions prior to the consent agenda vote. Would you be okay with Mark saying a few
Yeah.
words?
Yes.
Sure.
Thank you. So hopefully fairly straightforward. So, in the amendment itself, so nothing to the scope of the work that HDR will be performing, but you'll notice on the track changes here, there's a few items that really this is what we're talking about. It's just trying to make sure that the amendment is, showing the additional work and not replacing work that's been done to date. So it's just some legalities. That's the only change we had to the document, and that's what city manager will be signing. So that was the clarification.
Any questions on that? Okay,
A motion.
a motion, please?
Well, Mayor Westfall, it sounded like the person who called in had a comment regarding this subject.
Okay,
Should we give them the opportunity to talk?
Sure. Thank you. So, Mrs. Wells, would you like to comment at this time?
I guess I'm confused. This is related to the quiet zone work?
Yes, it is.
Yes, so what does this additional work mean?
If I might.
Yes.
So, Ms. Wells, what we're doing here is, we actually been given approval to proceed forward with the quiet zone. So, from the Federal Rail Administration. So what we need to do now is get a design prepared. Once that design is completed, construct the improvements, and then we can, submit a rail crossing order with Oregon Department of Transportation, and then petition to implement the quiet zones. With any luck, and things going smooth, we'd hopefully towards the end of this year, we might actually have the quiet zone established.
Okay, well, that was going to be my question. Your time frame then is not this year?
Well, again, so the design is scheduled to be completed by the end of August. We have to get some stuff, get the improvements built, and then after that, it's at least 21 days mandatory. So we have to petition everybody, let them know that that's going to be established, and then the quiet zone goes into effect. So it's going to be close.
Okay, I guess there's legitimate reasons it takes so long at this point.
I think leave it up till now, it's taken quite a while, I would agree. So we started this back in 2016,
Yes,
I believe.
that's right.
Yep, and it's been a timeline of submitting items for everybody to review. So not just our own reviews, but Burlington Northern, Union Pacific, Amtrak, Federal Rail Administration, ODOT Rail, all these have had to comment, and there's been multiple submittals to each of these agencies, each one with a turnaround time. Even the one at Federal Rail Administration.
I see. There's more opportunity for all of the different people to have to comment on the design. Do they also have the opportunity to reject it or amend it?
No, at this point in time, it's just a matter of finalizing the design for ODOT Rail to approve their crossing order. Once we've done the improvements, then what we do is we notify those same agencies I just listed to let them know that we are implementing this quiet zone, and then it can take effect as soon as 21 days after that notice.
Okay, I think I understand. If I read the minutes when they're out, will I get a little better understanding of what's being done? As
The
far
other
as
thing
the
we might do,
design
you're
work?
also welcome to give me a call, and I can speak with you directly about it, if that would be easier.
Oh, can we actually do that?
Absolutely.
Okay. That would be.
I will get you his contact information, Sally, and then you can just call him directly.
That'll be perfect. Thank you so much.
Certainly.
Perfect, thank you. So a motion. If there's no more questions, I would entertain a motion.
I'll move to.
All done. One at a time, but go ahead.
I move to approve council option number 1.
There's
Second?
no option on this one, Dan, it's just the consent agenda. It's just moving to approve the consent agenda and item number 5.2.
Okay, correction. I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All righty, thank you.
Thank you.
Number 6, the general public hearing, 6.1, an ordinance amending certain Klamath Falls City Code sections of Article 1, Chapter 7, known as the Business License Act, or Business License Act, and we have Development Service Director Scott Souders.
Oh, you can put the, yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Real quick, if you wanted to put up the track changes ordinance, we could put that up. Thank you. Good evening. So, as was introduced, we're here tonight to talk about making some amendments to the Business License Act, which is Article 1 of Chapter 7 of City Code. This effort is brought up for many different reasons. One is to clarify the ambiguous language that's in the current business license language. We're looking to improve license registry compliance and to seek and utilize this registration as a tool for public outreach and community marketing purposes. In a nutshell, the way that I have sort of looked at this since I've been here is the current Business License Act simply references business licenses as a tax. Staff believes that the business license should be utilized more as a registry for all businesses to ensure that we have compliance with zoning ordinances, as well as provide an opportunity for us to reach out to the community for marketing purposes, for survey purposes, and the such. So we've spent quite a bit of time over the last year or so working with different entities, seeking input from businesses, and having lots of dialogue internally. And we've come up with the proposed strike changes amendment to the ordinance that's in front of you this evening. And effectively, that's where we're at. We have had some additional dialogue as of even today with respect to Section 7.015, as far as one of the concerns that we've had over the years is how do you treat independent contractors? For example, hairdressers, maybe people that are teaching music, maybe are tattoo artists, people like that. How do you handle those sorts of contractors in the downtown? So one of the things that we would like to do, in addition to what you've already reviewed this evening with the track changes, is make a minor modification to Section D of 7.015. If I can find that really quickly. You've written it down. So what I was suggesting is we provide something with more clarity regarding independent contractors. Like I said, those entities such as hairdressers. So what we're proposing, one more slight modification to this, which would be, for purposes of this act, no person acting as an independent contractor whose income is based solely on wage, salary, or fee for service shall be considered a business unless that person has formed a distinct business entity. So in other words, if you have a hairdresser who is going to open a business within the downtown and they're a distinct business entity at that particular location, we would ask that that person have a business license. However, if it's like your regular salons in our downtown, which a lot of them, the business entity itself has a business license, but the hairdressers that are providing fees for service on the inside of that business have not traditionally been asked to have a business license. And so we're trying to provide some clarification to this. This is a very challenging process because every time we talk about it, we come up with another scenario. Some of the other things that we want to provide clarification on is the ambiguous language that was in the prior one was not very clear on if nonprofits should have a business license. And while nonprofits don't necessarily need to pay a fee for a business license, we do feel that they need to be within the registry so that we know who's performing business within the city, what businesses those are, and whether or not they're in compliance with our zoning ordinances. So with that, I open it up to any questions.
Scott, can you clarify, are you intending then to require the independent contractor hairdresser who just rents a space part-time to get a business license or not? I'm not sure on what you...
No, okay. and this is difficult without having this first. So that's a very good question. And no, we believe that the newly proposed language helps clarify that,
Okay.
that just the primary business entity, for example, Adora Salon or name any of the other ones that we have in our downtown, for example, just that entity itself would have the business license, but the independent contractors that are within the business, we would not require business license for each individual person.
So that's good
And-
to get that called out. And I do support the idea of the broadening the registry because there's oftentimes it's important to communicate different things that are happening downtown. So I think that's a good part of this.
That's correct, and I'm going to expand on that a little bit. And it's interesting. We've been talking about this for probably a year or more. And during the COVID situation, we ran into some situations where we needed to reach out to businesses, and we discovered that not everybody was in the registry for whatever reason. We didn't have up-to-date current contact information for a lot of those people because of our processes and because of the language that we have currently. And so those are some of the things we're trying to get around with this new process.
Can I ask a question?
This isn't a public hearing.
It's not a public hearing.
Yeah.
At this
Sorry,
Okay.
at this time.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Councilman Andrus, do you have anything to say on this?
I want to make sure I understand the council options on the report. And talks about holding a public hearing. The public hearing is to get more feedback for this, or is it to educate?
Excuse me, Counselor, this is Michael Swanson. We need to have the public hearing because this is an ordinance, and so because we're changing an ordinance, there's public hearing as part of the process.
Understood, but I'm going to restate my question. Is it to get feedback to make updates to this, or is it more of an education effort?
I think it could be a little bit of both, actually.
That's how I would describe it. It's spelled out in the charter that we do it this way. I think it's one for council to get feedback from the citizens who would be impacted. And then also it's a chance to educate council from, their concerns or even the citizens. So this is a charter process that's been there since the 50s when it was formed.
So really you're only asking us to hold a public hearing on this topic because changes could come also again for our consideration after that happens.
So you'd be introducing an ordinance so the ordinance that's proposed in front of you is what the public hearing would be on. And then
Okay.
it's just like any other public hearing, except we're not all physically here. So this is I think our first attempt at a public hearing, all virtual.
Mhm.
So, Sally would like to.
You can open it.
So I will open the public hearing at this point. Ms. Wells, if you would like to speak now, you can.
Well, thank you. I volunteer with the Klamath Tool Library at 1221 Main, which is a project of Sustainable Klamath, which is a 501c3. Would this require a business license of us?
Yes, it would, in the sense that you would be required to register. And thank you for bringing this question up. It's an excellent example. So because you're a 501c3, you're a nonprofit, so there would be no fee required for you, but there would be a registration process required. And the benefit of that for us is that, one, we know that where you're operating, that you're operating within our current zoning ordinances, which we believe you are. And then for the reason of, say, we wanted to do some public outreach within our downtown, we would have your contact information as that entity so that we could do surveys or reach out to you for different correspondence requirements. So that is one of the reasons why we're trying to modify this ordinance.
That sounds very reasonable. Thanks.
Very good, thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak on this at this point?
Hi, this is Darren Rutledge. I would throw in a couple comments.
Sure.
I agree with Scott. I think he's on the right track, updating some of the language on clarifying how independent contractors are handled in as much as being licensed. The current code, in my opinion, isn't explicitly clear whether those people need to be registered or not. I think this is a great opportunity to clarify that for those folks. I'm not sure the suggested change, I believe it was section D, is quite there. if there's an opportunity maybe to do some additional review, I think you could come out with probably a better product.
An option?
Yeah, I don't know how that process works. So I agree. Darren and I actually had some dialogue earlier, and leading into this meeting right now, we were kind of going back and forth on several different ways to do that. Mike and I spent quite a bit of time just today, this afternoon, the same way. And as we all know, we've worked on this for the last year, and every time you get into it, we're doing the best we can. One solution might be to adopt the language as proposed, and then we could come back with a clarifying policy or resolution of some sort, should it be needed as we move forward to clarify that position. I'm not exactly sure. Every time we touch it,
So that would be an appropriate use of a council policy to clarify an ordinance that maybe isn't as clear. I mean, you could use a policy to do that with the changes that you've already enacted. I think it would be clear enough to say here is the intent, and that would be adopted by council at a later date. Alternatively, council could say, let's just, the public hearing is still open. They could continue the public hearing to the next meeting, give us some time, and we would bring them a different ordinance that they would introduce. So those are two options. There's a whole other bunch, but those are two that are in front of council where they could still move forward or pause.
And I think it's important to note as well, there's no major emergency here. I mean, like I said, we've been working on this for a while. To let council know, we don't have real good success right now we've identified several businesses who do not have business licenses. We have elected, because of the COVID situation, we have elected to not aggressively go after anybody at this point to try to gain compliance. So this is an appropriate time to kind of work through this to get the language the way that we need it. So either option is fine with me. I don't know, Mike, if you have anything else to add.
That's fine. I think we've got it covered as long as everyone's kind of on the same page, and it sounds like we are. We all agree. Everything could use a little tweaking, but it seems like every time we tighten it up here, it loosens up over there. So
yeah,
that's one of the problems.
This is Darren. If I could add one more comment.
Go ahead.
Just to provide some context, these were some of the questions that the Economic Recovery Task Force had kind of talked about a little bit in some of the programs that we had recommended to council. I think it might have been coincidental, or I don't think the two efforts were necessarily connected, but just so worked out that Scott and Mike were working on an updated version here, and we had some conversation come up through the task force that brought up some of these questions, and that's why I raised a few concerns with Scott. So I apologize if it sounds like we're kind of throwing a wrench into the works at the last minute here, but again, I think there's an opportunity to tighten some of this up and make it a little more clear for some of those independent contractors.
Okay,
This is
very good.
Kat.
Anybody? Go ahead.
Sorry, Mayor, this is Kat with the Small
Okay.
Business Development Center.
All right, go ahead.
I didn't come to comment on this tonight, but since it is in my sphere, as the organization that holds the Smart Startup workshops for your community, I'd be delighted to consult. Scott, again, I don't want to slow your train down. It sounds like you've been working on this for a while, but I'd be happy to help you work through some wording and make sure that we've got some real clarity for those newbies, whether that's through policy or ordinance or however you do that, but just volunteering my services.
Will that work?
I'm completely open to whatever council wants to do. Honestly, it's not.
Good thoughts. Thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else? Okay.
Can I say something?
Sure.
So before we close the public hearing, I guess that would be a good point for council. If do they want to continue it, which would allow people to continue to comment next time, or do they want to close it and give us some other direction? So that'd be my only caution at this point. If they want to send us back and have us bring forward another or make some of those tweaks that Darren's talking about, my suggestion would be to continue the public hearing. If you want to try and handle it with a policy, which again, we work with Darren and Kat, you could close the public hearing. But I just want council to know that before we close the public hearing.
Okay. So how do you feel about that? Councilwoman Bell?
Here we go, sorry. Gosh, I'm really open. Either process to me is gonna be just fine. I appreciate the offer for some help with the wording. That's great, Darren and Kat. But as far as continuing or just adopting and adding a policy clarification later, I don't have a strong feeling either way on that. Anyone else?
Okay, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
If you closed public hearing, because there has to be a second reading, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you make any changes between first reading and second reading?
Mm-hmm.
There can be amendments.
Is there?
So I mean, if we keep it open, depending upon how extensive the changes are, that would make the most sense, so other people can comment. It keeps the record open so other people can reach out and comment.
Yeah.
Whereas if we were to close it and there was a motion passed on what we had proposed or what we had proposed amended, we can still work with the language, but it really does close the opportunity for the public to weigh in on things.
So if I might suggest, I'm definitely open to this topic being cleaned up, and maybe if Darren and Kat can provide some additional language to help us just make sure. I mean, I would rather the ordinance read cleanly without having to go to a policy if we can, because I think it makes it cleaner for my staff and for those trying to seek business licenses. So I would be more than happy to work back and forth with Kat and Darren and Mike and Nathan on, because we've all kind of been working on this to clean that section up, but move this forward for second reading, and then we can provide any of those minor amendments on the second reading. Is that work that way? I'm not.
You know, my take on this, I'd probably just leave the public hearing open.
Okay.
Because if you make the tweak, you might want somebody to, they'll have to do that.
Okay.
And as we're thinking here, I'm almost thinking we make those tweaks and we probably have a policy proposed at the same time, which is more specific. You normally wouldn't get super specific in an ordinance because it's an ordinance and it lasts, where a policy can be more specific and cause examples such as a hairdresser. Is not required. You could do that in a policy, you would not do that in an ordinance. So maybe the simplest thing is to tweak it a little bit and come back at the next meeting with a policy as well for council. It'd be two separate actions. So you would adopt an ordinance and then the policy would be adopted contingent on the ordinance passing, but it would be by resolution. So we can figure out the mechanics of that, but that would be my thought at this point, is how I would probably do it.
Okay.
All right, so if, wanted to make sure everybody, so Councilman Toffel, are your thoughts on this?
I agree to leave the public hearing open and then move to correct it.
Okay, Councilman Studenberg
I agree.
and, Councilman Dodson.
I make a motion to continue the public hearing to the next meeting.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Number 7, legislative actions, 7.1. Contract extension with Marina and Company LLP for the City of Klamath Falls and the Urban Renewal Agency audit services for the fiscal year 2020. Finance Director Jessica Lindsay. Review, please.
There we go. Good evening, council. We had a contract for Marina and Company. We signed it in 2014. It was for 3 years with an option of a 3-year extension, which ended in the last audit was for 2019. And so the contract was up. I was preparing an RFP to send out in March when the COVID-19 hit. Due to the logistics with all of my staff teleworking, doing an RFP just seemed like a difficult process to go through, especially staff who'd never done an audit one, and we do grade on it and discussions. So I'm requesting a 1-year extension with Marina and Company. Our contract amount is $67,900.
Any questions, comments? Councilman Bell? Okay.
I think it makes
Entertain a
perfect
motion.
sense.
Mayor West, oh,
Go ahead, Councilwoman Bell first, please.
Oh, I was just commenting, I think it makes perfect sense, and I was going to make a motion, but I heard another person comment.
Councilman Andrus.
go ahead, Counselor Bell. I'm right behind you, so.
Oh, okay, great. I would move to approve a contract extension with Marina and Company LLP in an amount not to exceed $67,900.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, thank you. And all opposed? Okay, very good. 7.2, an economic development funding request for 2020 and 2021. City Manager Nathan Gerbesky. Dealing.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Last year, we moved to a biennial budget. It seems to be a very wise choice because we were not stuck trying to hold budget hearings in COVID-19. So we're lucky, thank goodness. But as part of that, Council adopted monies for both years for the economic development support that we provided, but we did not award 2-year contracts. So back in January, I believe I asked the groups to resubmit for the coming year, all pre-COVID-19. So hats off to them. They did submit during that time frame. The monies that are requested fit within the monies that we had budgeted. And you'll see the chart that's on the screen. There's a little bit, because not all the money is in one spot. Specifically for the downtown flowers and the banners, we budget those in a different operating fund, and so they are not in the economic development fund. So that $21,500 is outside of those dollars. With that said, everything fit within the monies that you had put in. I will tell you, I've spent a lot of time thinking about how this COVID-19 is going to impact our budget going forward. And I know Jessica has as well. We've spent some time running some numbers. I believe at this point, it would be prudent to continue funding our economic development groups. They're the ones helping our small businesses through this time. And this is not to cast aspersions on previous councils, but in every city during the Great Recession, we all started pulling back expenses, and nearly everywhere we cut money to outside groups, specifically economic development. We whittled them down to the bone. It took us a long time to get out of that recession. We're faced with a different kind of recession this time, but I'm wondering, learning from the past, if we cut too deeply in those areas that are intended to help us and help businesses grow and start. And so it took us longer to come out of it. I could be wrong, but I believe we should continue the funding, at least in this second half of the biennium. We'll know more as we go into our next biennium how the economy is doing and where it's going. Because we are property tax heavy, it takes a while to roll down to us. Our only immediate areas we're going to see are transient room tax and fuel taxes. So that's that's currently the staff recommendation, and certainly be willing to answer questions to council. Both the representatives from many of these groups are on the line, if you have questions for them.
Councilman Bell, ready to go? Okay, I'll start with Councilwoman Bell. How do you feel about this?
Well, Nathan, I appreciate that train of thought. I do agree 100% that hanging with the economic development efforts is a really good way to go. And I know it's hard to do that in times like this, but I think it's a concept I really can be behind, and I appreciate that. So I'm in favor of kind of keeping it where it is.
Very good. Councilman Andrews.
Yeah, I don't have any concerns.
Councilman Studenberg.
I'm on board.
Councilman Dodson.
Yeah, with, this comment is probably more directed to the organizations that are on board or that are on the call. I mean, I see that the CASITA says it's an emphasis on data center recruitment. And then, you know, I guess kind of the downtown association is just ensuring it continues to look good. And maybe Nathan can jump in and say, this should be the city's role or take the lead on it. But, you know, the one thing, you know, the after 60 days, the blush is how many big 20-story corporate offices are there going to be anymore, and how many people are going to prefer to telecommute at least some of the time, if not as a standby, go to the office on a monthly or bi-monthly basis. And so I guess the thing I'd be throwing out is, you know, is that Klamath IDEA or CASITA that can tell us what this community needs to attract 500 telecommuters from Portland or San Francisco to be residents. I think there could be a few things, and maybe some of them we look at it and we just can't compete without an airport. I'm not positive, but if there is a way we can compete, you know, what can we do? What are those people that are thinking about it now or have done it in the last couple of years? What does this city need to offer to get them to move here instead of Boise? Well, Boise's probably too big. Instead of Sun Valley, Ketchum.
Councilman.
But otherwise, as far as the funding amounts, I'm okay with maintaining where we're at in the previous budget.
City Manager.
So I'm about, I'd say 70% through a memo, writing a memo to council specifically on that topic, because I'd asked you to think if there were people you knew who already telecommute, so we could start picking their brains in how we position ourselves. Eric Osterberg, who's new in the city, he's working on some research on how we as a city make some of those specific decisions, be very deliberate about how we come out of this, and I think that telecommuting is a big one. I would say, I don't know who the exact group on there, but I intend, and I would think that council would want all of them to at least participate in that discussion as we determine what we need to do. I do think people are going to be looking at, they're calling it a push-pull. The city has a pull, but there's a push now to move to the rural. I think at least for the next couple of years, the push is going to be a little bit stronger than the pull. And so if we can position ourselves, we might be able to get people. And I think once they have a lifestyle here, going back and living in a 700 square foot apartment is just not going to be that attractive for them, and so we would do well. So I, at one point, was thinking about having it ready for tonight, and I thought we had too many other things, and so I'd get past this and write the memo. So Counselor Dodson's just ahead of me again. I'll try and catch up, and I'll get that memo out to you guys. And again, if you know people who are already telecommuting, if you could get us their names, I think we would just like, maybe we'll get them together on a virtual, but talk about what brought them here and what are some of the hurdles that make it difficult here, so we can start to address some of those things.
Very good. Good. And then Councilman Toffel.
I agree with the city manager's position.
Very good. Okay. If there
Mayor,
aren't
this
any
is
more
Kat.
questions, go ahead. Go ahead.
This is Kat from The Idea. I just wanted to acknowledge that actually telecommuting was one of the 10 options presented by the consultant that we worked with out of Nebraska. And it is something that we did look at. It was not something that we put in our top 3 strategies, but COVID has changed things a little bit. So I have, I would offer that we already have some data, quite a bit of data around telecommuting and those commuters and history and various information. So I would offer that, happy to help work with Eric on that. And then the other thing that I would offer, you might remember that we talked about people attraction as a strategy in entrepreneurship. And I said, it is a team sport that we should be focused, the Klamath Idea should be focused on entrepreneur attraction, but that we would need kind of a higher up SCOED or a CASITA, more an overarching organization to look at people attraction. And I think this is a great time to revisit that. So delighted to partner with whoever wants to work on it.
Excellent. Any more comments or discussion on this?
Mayor, this is Randy Cox. I just to answer Councilman Dodson's question. We've had 4 conference calls related to advertising and marketing Klamath Falls to the telecommuters. We didn't limit it to Portland. We talked about San Francisco and some other areas that we would put a marketing blitz on this ability to work remotely. We think that this will be the new way of doing business going forward. And we're actually working on those items that would keep commuters from moving to Klamath Falls and trying to address those in our marketing strategy. It's just initial work that we've spent, I think last 4 weeks, we've had 4 phone calls on it. And I'd love to bring you guys up to speed on this as soon as we have a package and use what information that you receive, Mayor and the council and also what Kat has found in her past. So it's a great idea. We need to be doing it. We've flattened the curve here in Klamath Falls. We know how to work in an area that is a lot safer than other places that have international airports that have been hamstrung by this. We think there will be a big exodus from the major cities into communities like ours. We just need to be prepared and tell people that we exist and we're open for business.
And thank you so much for the economic development, all of you for what you're doing and working together. So it's really important. So at this point, I will entertain a motion.
Mayor Westfall, I move to approve the funding request as presented and authorize the city manager to finalize and sign the necessary agreements.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 And all opposed. Thank you very much. Item 7.3, the authorization to enter in a clean water state has been pulled and will be brought back to council on June 1st, 2020. On to 7.4, a resolution adopting a supplemental budget for the 2019-2021 biennial budget period within the Economic Development Property Fund and the Escrow Reserve Fund. And Jessica Lindsay.
Hello. Yeah, I have a supplemental budget for you for the Economic Development Fund. Materials and services needs to increase $16,000 for the Ross Raglan's Light the Tower campaign, $10,000 for the food bank donation for the COVID-19 response, and $25,000 for the COVID-19 restaurant support. The funding for this will come from the Escrow Reserve Fund, with a transfer in of $51,000. There's some other items that are still outstanding that will need to come before you in another supplemental budget for other COVID-19 funding and some grant monies that we have, but this is what we have for tonight.
Okay. Questions? Comments?
Mayor Westfall, I'll move to introduce the resolution and read by title only.
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Okay, all opposed. City Manager, please read the resolution by title only.
A resolution adopting a supplemental budget for the 2019-2021 biennial budget period within the Economic Development Property Fund and Escrow Reserve Fund.
Hold on just a moment. Let me
Mayor,
really quick.
Mayor Westfall, I move to approve the resolution.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Clarification on the second, was that you, Matt, or Phil?
Bill.
Okay, thank you, I'm sorry about that. Counselor Toffel? Was that yes?
Yes.
Okay, Counselor Dodson? Counselor Dodson?
Yes.
Counselor Studenberg?
Yes.
Counselor Bell?
Yes.
Counselor Andres?
Yes.
Very good. So at this point, we have other matters. So we have Airport Master Plan, John Bartholow.
Hi, I'm going to stand at the virtual podium since we're at a virtual meeting here. So I just have a few things to say. As the mayor said, good evening, and I just wanted to take a minute to remind you about and the public regarding the airport's master plan update. There was a virtual public open house regarding the master plan update on May 6th at 5:30 p.m. The various chapters, meeting minutes, et cetera, of the master plan update are available for review, along with a virtual open house video at www.lmtmasterplan.com. And I'm asking for public comments by not later than May 20th at 5 p.m. Commenters can either use the public comment form provided on the referenced website or by submitting comments directly to the master plan team on the website or to the airport at information@flykpauls.com. Again, this is just a reminder for the upcoming deadline for the public comments, May 20th at 5 p.m. by going to www.lmtmasterplan.com. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And City Manager.
Yes, so before the current situation started, we had some conversations about maybe some improvements in this room specifically. The conference table has started to delaminate in a few areas, and we were trying to clean up our image. And so I had reached out to two local businesses who specialize in one providing wood and the other building custom tables to see what the price would be for a locally provided wooden table. So it would be a local species here. So I just wanted to make sure that that was still something council was interested in. I'd received a quote to replace this table. As I told some of the others, the quote was, it wasn't a terrible quote, but then they sent me the picture and it sent me back to my high school cafeteria is what the table looks like. I was shocked that it would cost that much. It was a little nicer than those tables, but it looked a lot like them. And so I trying to use that as a basis for what we would spend. I just want to make sure if council's still interested in even looking at that. If they are, what I would do is have Cook Woods, who provides wood all over the country, but they would provide us several local species. A local custom furniture person would then give us some couple samples of what they would look like finished, and then council could decide. But I just want to make sure that's something council still has an interest in me spending time on.
And shall I pull them? Counselor Toffel,
Yes, that's fine.
Counselor Dodson,
That's fine. I'm good with it.
Counselor Studenberg,
Yes.
Counselor Bell,
Yes.
and Counselor Andrews.
Yep.
All righty, very good. Anybody else, have any comments on, other matters? I will,
Okay, don't everybody race in for this one. I'm sorry,
oh, go ahead, are you,
I'm ready for a motion to adjourn, yes, but.
motion to adjourn?
So moved. Yeah. Give that one to Dan.
Matt.
Or Matt.
I got,
All in favor, say aye.
I got Matt, hold on, wait a minute,
Who's the
the second.
I'll second. Yeah. Give it to Dan.
Thank you. Matt got first, Dan got second, thank you so much, it's 7:51 and we're out.
And all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Okay, good night, thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. See you next time together.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Are we getting together next week?
Hopefully. I'll be spread out.
I think so.
Yeah.
Hey, real quick before you go, is
Yeah.
Mike still there?
Yeah,
I'm just curious
I
as to
heard.
his thoughts on, yeah, I want to know what your thoughts are.
Maybe you should send you all a memo.
Yeah.
We've been having a conversation here.
Because if he hasn't ended the meeting, we're still live streaming.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So this can,
Understood.
okay,
Okay.
concludes our meeting.
Let him send you something.